The council chamber was louder than usual. Delegates from 100 different worlds filled the air with chatter, each voice layered over the next. Bright banners hung from the ceiling, each showing the crest of a member world. The air smelled faintly of flowers from the Aethari delegation and metal from the Zyran. But in the very center of the ring-shaped hall, there was a single empty seat. It was tall-backed, carved from old oak, a human design that seemed out of place among the sleek alien forms around it. The metal plaque below read, Earth, Terran UNIT Y487 meetings. That seat had been empty. Tal, a young archivist from the small moon world of Pellis, had always wondered about it. His job was to record speeches, votes, and history as it happened. He had never once seen the humans in person. All he knew were fragments. A ship that had saved thousands from a collapsing star, a fleet that had vanished afterward, and rumors that Earth wanted nothing to do with the Council. Today, though, as he set up his recording lens, Tal felt something different. It wasn't the usual noise in the chamber. It was a strange heaviness in the air, as if everyone was pretending not to notice the same thing. The seat was still empty, but somehow it felt heavier than the rest of the room. Tal had a reason for caring more than most. Years ago, before the humans withdrew, he had been a child on a space station near the edge of a supernova zone. When the Council fleets couldn't arrive in time, human ships had come instead. They'd moved like shadows in firelight, fast, decisive, and unstoppable. A human officer had carried Tal to safety herself. He could still remember her voice telling him it was all going to be all right. But after that, nothing. No visits, no messages, no chance to say thank you. Over time, the memory had faded into something that felt like a dream. He told himself maybe humans were just too far away, too busy, too uninterested in being part of the galaxy. Still, whenever he saw that empty seat, it felt like losing a friend you never had the chance to really know. The meeting began. The Council. Speaker's voice echoed through the hall, calling for order. Delegates debated trade routes, border disputes, and shared defense patrols. Tal's hands moved over his recording panel, his mind only half listening. Between speeches, his eyes kept drifting to the empty seat. What if the humans came back? He wondered. Would they be the same as before? Would they even remember people like him? During a break, Tal wandered into the Hall of Emblems, where each member world's flag and history were displayed. The human section was small, just a folded flag, a model of a sleek warship, and a holographic plaque with a short history. It ended with the words, After the evacuation of the Viran star, Earth's government withdrew from active council membership. No further official communications have been recorded. Tal stood there for a long time. He thought about sending a message, a personal one. Just a small note saying, I haven't forgotten. I hope you're all right. But then he imagined the vast distance between stars, the millions of people they must protect, and how small his voice would be. Instead, he just pressed his hand to the glass of the display case. I wish you'd come back, he whispered. The afternoon session dragged on. Delegates argued fiercely about a new border treaty. Tal's recording lens caught it all, but his focus stayed locked on that single empty seat. It seemed almost like it was waiting. That was when the first alarm sounded. The noise was low and deep, not the sharp alarm for fire or structural damage. This was the old warning tone, the one reserved for unregistered fleets entering planetary orbit. The chamber fell silent. Tal's heart began to race. He didn't know why, but part of him dared to hope. Through the great crystal dome above, a shadow passed. At first, it was just a blur, then a solid line, then a shape so vast it blocked the sunlight entirely. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some delegates stood. Others reached for comms to their fleets. Tal craned his neck. He could see the silver edges of a massive ship, its design unmistakable to him, even after all these years. Straight, angular lines. No visible weapons, yet the air seemed to vibrate with its presence. Another ship slid into view, then another, then 10 more. The sky became a wall of moving steel dot. Someone in the chamber whispered, "Humans." Tal's breath caught in his throat. The fleet hovered silently, engines glowing like captured suns. They made no move to attack, no sign of aggression. But there was no mistaking their message. They had arrived, and they would be heard. For the first time in his life, Tal saw someone take the human seat. She was tall, wearing a dark uniform with silver trim. Her eyes swept the chamber, calm but unblinking. The council speaker opened his mouth to speak, but she raised a hand. Her voice was steady. "This seat has been empty too long." Tal's hands trembled as he recorded every word. He didn't know why they had come now, or what they would say next. But he felt something warm in his chest, like the day he had been carried away from the fire, when a voice told him it would be all right. The distance between Earth and the rest of the galaxy had been long, silent, and cold. But now, maybe it wasn't too late. And as the 1,000 human engines burned above them, the empty seat was empty no more. Every delegate stared at the human woman in the empty seat. Her uniform was crisp, her posture perfectly straight. She didn't speak again right away. She just let the silence stretch. For Tal, that silence was louder than the alarms had been. He remembered, almost painfully, the way she looked, not because she was a stranger, but because her eyes reminded him of the officer who had saved him as a boy. Could it be her? No, the years didn't match. But maybe she knew that officer. Maybe they all did. The speaker finally found his voice. "Earth, you honor us with your return. May we ask?" But the human woman cut him off. "We are not here for honor." Her words were sharp, but her tone wasn't cruel. It was tired. "We are here because too many decisions have been made without us. That ends now." Murmurs filled the chamber. Tal's recorder kept working, but his mind wasn't on his duties anymore. His thoughts drifted to the human officer who had carried him. That moment had been the most important in his life, and yet they had never spoken again. She had moved away, across the stars, leaving only a memory. Now Earth itself had done the same thing. And suddenly, Tal felt like a child again, longing to reconnect, but not knowing how. During the break between council sessions, the human woman Admiral Siravans, as she was introduced, didn't mingle with the other delegates. She stood near the great window, watching the fleet above. Tal found himself walking toward her before he could think better of it. His voice was small when he spoke. "Admiral, may I ask you something?" Her eyes moved to him, sharp but not unfriendly. "Yes?" "Years ago," Tal said, his voice almost trembling, "a human officer saved my life. She carried me off a station before it collapsed. I never saw her again. I've always wanted to thank her, but I don't even know her name." The Admiral studied him for a moment. "Do you remember anything about her?" Tal nodded quickly. "She had dark hair. Her voice was steady. She told me it was all going to be all right, even when everything was falling apart." A faint smile touched the Admiral's face. "I think I know who you mean. Captain Alira Kale. She retired years ago. Lives on one of our colony worlds." Tal's breath caught. "She's alive?" "Yes," the Admiral said. "Humans don't forget those they've helped, Tal of Pellis." The words stayed with him long after she turned, back to the window. Humans don't forget. Maybe the distance hadn't been because they didn't care. Maybe it was something else, something bigger than him. Still, how could he reconnect with someone across the stars? He didn't even know if she would remember him. And yet, he couldn't stop imagining it, sending her a message, telling her how that single day had shaped his whole life. When the council resumed, The humans didn't make threats. They didn't boast about their fleet. Instead, they listened quietly, carefully to every debate. Whenever they spoke, it was direct and clear, as if they had already considered the problem from every angle. Tal realized something. Their absence had not made them out of touch. If anything, they seemed to know more than anyone else. Maybe that was their HFY humans for the win, not just because of power, but because of how they used it. They didn't rush. They didn't waste words. They waited until the moment mattered most. After the session, Tal lingered outside the chamber. The Admiral passed by, heading toward the secure human transport. He hesitated, then called out, "Admiral, if I wanted to send a message to Captain Kale, how would I do it?" She paused, looking back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then she took a small device from her uniform pocket and held it out. "This will connect to her private channel. Use it when you're ready." Tal stared at the device in his palm. It was small and plain, no bigger than a coin, but it felt heavy with possibility. "Why give this to me?" he asked softly. "Because," she said, "sometimes the galaxy is smaller than we think. And sometimes people are closer than they seem." That night, Tal couldn't sleep. The device sat on his desk, its small light pulsing gently, waiting. He thought about all the things he could say. "Thank you. I haven't forgotten. You saved me. You made me believe people could care, even when they didn't have to." But each time he reached for it, he pulled his hand back. What if she didn't? Remember him? What if she didn't want to? And then, just before dawn, he realized something. It didn't matter. The next few days on Velis Prime felt different. The 1,000 human ships still hung in the sky above the Council world. Their engines glowed like steady suns, never dimming, never drifting. For many in the city below, it was unsettling, a reminder of Earth's power. But for Tal, it meant something else now. After his call with Captain Kale, the sight of those ships felt like a bridge instead of a wall. Still, even with that bridge, there was a space between him and her. They had spoken once, but he didn't know if it was right to call her again. He didn't want to seem like he was asking too much. And so, he found himself waiting. Unsure if the connection they had made would last. The council met every day, and every day the human delegation surprised the others. They didn't argue, for their own benefit. Instead, they listened to smaller worlds, the ones the council often ignored. They asked questions about broken trade routes, unsafe mining colonies, or planets struggling after natural disasters. Tal noticed it first, how the humans didn't talk much about themselves, but somehow left each meeting having helped someone. Else, it reminded him of that day years ago when Kale had carried him to safety. She hadn't asked for anything. She had just acted without hesitation. One afternoon, during a recess, Tal walked through the long garden that wrapped around the council dome. The air was cool, filled with the sound of running water and wind through tall, glass-leafed trees. Wasn't expecting to see Admiral Vance there, standing at the edge of a pond, watching the reflections of the ships overhead. "Archivist Tal," she said without turning. "Admiral," he replied, a little awkwardly. "You spoke to Kale." She said, "I'm glad." Tal hesitated. I still feel like I'm far away from her. We talked, but it's been years. I don't know if I'm part of her life anymore." Vance finally looked at him. "Distance is not just space between stars. It's the silence we let grow." He frowned. "So, you think I should talk to her again?" The Admiral gave the faintest smile. "If you care, you don't wait for someone else to close the distance. You move." Her words stayed with him for the rest of the day. That night, Tal sat in his small quarters, the communication device resting on his desk. He thought about calling Kale again, but instead he opened the message function. That way, she could read it when she wanted. He kept it simple. Captain Kale, I hope you're well. I wanted you to know that I work at the Council now. The humans have returned, and I think you'd be proud of how they helped the smaller worlds. Thank you again for everything. He hesitated only a second before sending it. Days passed. The Council was deep in debate over a dangerous border dispute between two large empires. The humans listened quietly until one delegate accused a smaller colony of lying about its own defense needs. Admiral Vance simply said, Terran Unity has already sent engineers to confirm the colony's reports. They were correct. The room went silent. The humans hadn't just listened. They had acted before the meeting even started. Tal felt a quiet pride in that. Humanity didn't just talk about helping. They did it. That was the heart of their HFY, showing the galaxy that power wasn't only for defending yourself, but for lifting others up. Late that evening, Tal returned to his quarters to find his device blinking. A new message. It was from Kale. Tal. I'm glad you wrote. I've kept track of Council news. I've heard about Earth's return, but hearing it from you feels different. I'd like to see you again, someday. The words made his chest tighten. She wanted to see him again. The distance suddenly felt smaller. The next morning, he walked into the chamber with a lightness in his step. He still had no idea when someday might be, but it was enough to know it existed. He also noticed something else that morning. Several other delegates, ones from small, quiet worlds, had begun to sit closer to the humans during breaks. They were talking, asking questions, even laughing. It wasn't just him finding a bridge across the distance. The humans were building bridges everywhere. That evening, Velis Prime held a reception for all council members. Most of the humans didn't attend. They preferred to keep things quiet, but Admiral Vance was there. Tal found her speaking to a delegate from a small desert world that had nearly been wiped out by drought. When she saw Tal, she gave a slight nod. You moved, she said simply. Tal smiled. She wrote back. Good, Vance replied. Connections are like engines. You have to keep them running, or they go cold. That night, as Tal walked home, he looked up at the dark sky. The human ships were still there, steady and unmoving, engines burning softly like a line of distant stars. He thought about Kale, about how far away she was, and yet how close her words had felt. He thought about Admiral Vance, and how humans seemed to carry the same steady flame, whether they were saving a station or speaking in a council hall. And for the first time, he understood something. Distance is real, but so is the choice to close. It. Above Velis Prime, humanity's 1,000 engines didn't just guard a planet. They lit the way back. Asterisk, the human fleet had been in orbit for nearly 3 weeks. To the rest of the galaxy, their presence was still a surprise. To Tal, it had begun to feel like a quiet comfort, like a promise that they weren't going to vanish again. He still hadn't spoken to Kale again. She had written that she wanted to see him someday, but that word hung in his mind like a star just out of reach. He didn't know how to turn someday into soon. The council was now deep in negotiations over a food shortage on a cluster of farming colonies. Larger empires were offering aid, but with heavy demands in return. Tal noticed how the humans stayed quiet for most of the debate. Only at the end did Admiral Vance stand, saying simply, Terran Unity has already dispatched transports to those colonies. No payment is required. We will coordinate with their local governments directly. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The other empires began arguing, not about whether the colonies deserved help, but about why Earth had acted without waiting for permission. Tal couldn't stop smiling. This was exactly what Kale had done for him all those years ago. She hadn't asked. She had simply saved him. That evening, when Tal returned to his quarters, He found another message from Kale.TAHL. I've been following the reports about the Council. Sounds like you're right in the middle of history. If you ever want to see where I've been living, you're welcome to visit. It's quiet here, but I think you'd like it. His heart leapt. She had invited him, but then the doubts came. What if he left and the Council needed him? What if the humans moved on again before he got back? What if, after all these years, they didn't really have much to say to each other? He read the message again and again. The distance between them wasn't just stars. It was the fear of finding nothing left after so long apart. The next day, he found Admiral Vance in the Council gardens. She was speaking to a young delegate from a mining world that had just signed a trade agreement with Earth. When they finished, Tal stepped forward. Admiral, Kale invited me to visit her. Vance raised an eyebrow. And you're still here. Why? I don't know if I should go, Tal admitted. What if it's been too long? What if I don't belong in her life anymore? Vance's voice was calm. You'll never know if you stay here wondering. Sometimes the only way to close the distance is to cross it. 2 days later, Tal was aboard a small human transport. The ship's hull was dark and smooth, its interior simple but warm. The crew treated him politely, but didn't ask many questions. As the transport lifted off, Tal looked back at Villis Prime. The Council dome sparkled in the sunlight. Above it, the human fleet was still a wall of fire and steel. For the first time since the humans had arrived, he was leaving that sight behind. The journey took 3 days. The colony where Kale lived was small, just a scattering of towns under the pale light of a quiet sun. The air was fresh, the ground covered in silver-green grass that moved like water in the wind. Kale was waiting at the landing field. She looked older than he remembered, but her eyes were exactly the same, steady, calm, and warm. Tal, she said, smiling. You came. He tried to answer, but all the words he'd practiced seemed to vanish. He just nodded. They walked through the small town together. She showed him the fields, the river, the meeting hall where locals gathered every week. It's not as exciting as the Council, she said, half smiling. It's peaceful, Tal said. And it was. He could see why she had chosen this place after years of service. They talked for hours about the rescue, about the years since, about the people they'd met and the things they'd seen. And with every word, the space between them felt smaller. That evening, they sat by the river as the sun sank low. I always meant to thank you, Tal said quietly. But after you left, I didn't know how to reach you. It felt like you were gone forever. Kale's gaze stayed on the water. When I left, I thought it was the right thing. Earth was pulling back from the galaxy. I didn't know if we'd ever return, but I never forgot that day. Or you. Tal swallowed hard. I thought maybe you had. Kale shook her head. Humans remember. We may move away, but we don't erase the people we care about. We just wait for the right time to return. The next morning, Tal stood on the hill above the town, looking at the quiet sky. He knew he couldn't stay forever. His work was back at the Council. But now he also knew that distance didn't have to mean loss. Kale walked up beside him. When you go back, she said, tell them this. The galaxy is big, but it's not too big for people to find each other again. The week after Tal returned from visiting Kale, the Council chamber was louder than he had ever heard it. 2 powerful empires, the Dravik Alliance and the Morland Compact, were close to breaking ties. They were accusing each other of sabotage, theft, and betrayal. The speaker tried to keep order, but delegates shouted over each other. The room felt like it might break apart. Through it all, the human delegation sat quietly. Admiral Vance's expression didn't change, her gaze moving from one delegate to another, as if studying a puzzle. THL, seated in the archivist section, felt an odd pull. The scene reminded him of his own feelings toward Kale before they reconnected, two sides that had once been close, now too far apart to speak to each other without anger. When the shouting reached its peak, Admiral Vance stood. Her voice cut through the noise without being loud. Enough. The chamber fell silent, as if the word itself had weight. Dravik, Morlan, she said, turning to face each group in turn. You are both wrong, and you are both right. The truth is being buried under your anger. One of the Dravik delegates sneered. And what would Earth know of our border disputes? You've been gone for decades. Vance didn't flinch. We know what it's like to lose trust. We also know how to rebuild it. We didn't return to the council to watch it tear itself apart. The speaker asked if the humans had a solution. Yes, Vance said simply. Let us investigate. Both of you will provide us with full access to your records. We will find the truth. The two empires hesitated. Neither wanted to be seen as refusing Earth directly. Finally, they agreed, but with visible reluctance. The meeting ended without resolution, but with the humans holding the responsibility. That night, Tal sat in his quarters, turning Kale's words over in his mind. The galaxy is big, but it's not too big for people to find each other again. The Dravik and Morlan reminded him of himself and Kale before the reunion, two sides locked in silence, both afraid to take the first step. He wondered, could he help? Not with the investigation itself, but with the part no one seemed to be thinking about, reminding them why they had been allies in the first place. The next day, Tal went to Admiral Vance. I think I can help, he said. She raised an eyebrow. You're not an investigator. No, Tal agreed. But I've been where they are. I know what it feels like to be far away from someone you used to trust. Sometimes you need a reason to close that gap. Vance studied him for a moment, then nodded. Do it, but quietly. Tal began researching old council records. He found footage from 30 years ago, when the Dravik Alliance and Morlan Compact had worked together to stop a deadly plague on a neutral world dot in the recordings. He saw the two leaders, then much younger, standing side by side, sharing resources and celebrating the victory. He edited the footage into a short sequence and sent it to both delegations with a simple message. You were stronger together once. You can be again. At first, there was no response. But 3 days later, during the next council session, something happened. The Dravik and Morlan delegates still sat far apart, but they weren't shouting. They listened as Admiral Vance presented the results of the human investigation. The sabotage had not come from either side, but from a third group hoping to push them into war. Gasps filled the room. Vance's voice stayed calm. You were meant to destroy each other. We suggest you don't. The two delegations exchanged a long look. And then, slowly, they both nodded. After the meeting, Tal was heading out when one of the Morlan aides approached him. You sent the old footage, the aide said. Our leader watched it more than once. It reminded her why she fought alongside the Dravik in the first place. Tal smiled faintly. Sometimes we just need to remember. That evening, back in his quarters, he sent a message to Kale. I helped. Two sides see each other differently today. It reminded me of us. I think I understand. Now distance isn't the end. It's just the space waiting to be crossed. Her reply came not long after. That's exactly it. Tal, I'm proud of you. The next morning, the council chamber felt lighter. The Dravik and Morlan were not friends yet, but they were speaking without anger. The humans didn't boast about their role. They didn't need to. Everyone had seen it. Above Velis Prime, the 1,000 engines still burned. To many, they were a symbol of Earth's power. But to Tal, they were something more. A reminder that even the widest distances could be crossed if someone chose to build the bridge. Asterisk, it was late in the evening when the alert came. Tal was alone in the archives, finishing a report, when his com tablet flashed red. Priority message Velen Cielonwy his breath. Velen Colony was Kale's home. He opened the message with shaking hands. A mining outpost near the colony had been attacked by unknown raiders. They were moving toward Velen's outer settlements. The message ended with a cold sentence. All civilian communications from Velen are currently offline. For a long moment, Tal couldn't move. The galaxy felt suddenly too big, too wide. Space between him and Kale felt heavier than ever. He didn't know if she was safe. He didn't even know if she was alive. He forced himself to think. The Velen system was far from the Council's core worlds. Any official response could take weeks. By then, it might be too late. But Tal remembered something Admiral Vance had told him once. After the Dravik-Morland dispute, if you care about someone or something, you don't wait for permission to act. TAHL went to the human delegation's offices. Admiral Vance was still there, studying fleet data. They're going after Velen Colony, he said. We can't wait for the Council to decide. Her eyes narrowed. Velen's not under Earth's direct protection. It doesn't matter. Tal said, people are there. Kale is there. Vance studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're asking for more than you know. But I think you're right. She tapped a control, sending a coded order. The Odyssey is the fastest ship we have in this sector. It leaves in 20 minutes. You'll be on it. The Odyssey was a human long-range patrol vessel, built for speed and precision strikes. Tal had never been aboard one before. From the moment they launched, everything moved with sharp efficiency. Human crew members coordinated without raised voices. Every command crisp. Tal watched as the stars blurred into light around them. He had always admired human technology, but now, sitting here with Kale's life on the line, he understood what really made them powerful. It wasn't just their ships. It was that they chose to cross the distance, no matter how far. 2 days later, the Odyssey dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Velen system. The raiders were already in orbit. Over one of the outer settlements, Captain Ruiz didn't hesitate. Shields up. Target their weapons arrays. Disable, don't destroy. In minutes, the Odyssey's precision railguns shredded the raiders' targeting systems. Their ships scattered, retreating into the void. Tal's heart was pounding, but he had only one thought. Kale. The captain approved a shuttle run to the colony's surface. Tal joined a small relief team. When the shuttle's ramp lowered, he stepped onto Velen's reddish soil. Smoke hung in the air, but the settlement was still standing. He moved through the streets, scanning every face. Then he saw her. Kale stood near the main square, helping carry supplies from the storage shelter. When she turned and saw him, her eyes widened. Tal, for a moment, neither of them moved. Then he crossed the space between them in 3 quick steps. You're safe, he said, his voice breaking. I'm safe. She agreed. But what are you doing here? This is half the galaxy from Velis Prime. I couldn't wait for news. Humans, they don't wait either. So I came. She smiled, tired but warm. I knew you'd find a way. Around them, the relief team worked with quiet efficiency. Human medics tended to the injured. Engineers restored the colony's comms network, and security teams swept the area for hidden threats. The whole operation was smooth, focused not because it was easy, but because every person here had decided. That distance was not an excuse. That evening, after the worst of the chaos was handled, Tal and Kale sat outside the shelter, looking up at Velen's pale moons. When you first left, Tal said softly, I thought that was the end. I didn't know how to reach you. The distance felt impossible. Kale looked at him. And now? Now I know it's just space. And space can be crossed. The next day, when the Odyssey prepared to leave, Kale walked into the shuttle. You should come back when it's peaceful, she said. I will, Tal promised, and not just once. She gave him a long look, then hugged him tightly. Don't let the distance win. I won't, he said when the Odyssey lifted off. Tal watched the colony shrink beneath them. He realized something the humans had shown him again and again. Hope wasn't just an idea. It was a choice. And choosing it meant moving, acting, building the bridge yourself. He had crossed the stars once to reach Kale. He would do it again, and again, for as long as it took. Above Velen, the ship turned toward the deep dark, engines burning bright, a human light in the endless night.